Hi, welcome everybody. I'm here with Rebecca Olson. Thank you for joining me today.
Yes, thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
It's great to have you. So, I'm going to start with your bio and then we're going to get going.
Okay.
So, Rebecca Olson is an executive life coach, speaker, and host of the Ambitious and Balanced Working Moms podcast. She helps high achieving women, working moms, create sustainable work life balance without sacrificing their career ambitions or family presence. Welcome, welcome. This is a great topic for us to have. And we're both working moms, so we have our own experience, and we can talk about what our clients and the people that we know experience and what we think would help them.
Yes.
So, tell us a little bit more about what you actually do.
Yeah, I have a 9 and an 11-year-old. So my daughter is 11, turning 12 soon. Really she looks like she's 15 or 16 and acts like it these days. That's kind of the stage we're in. But when I was pregnant with her, which took a bit to get pregnant with her, I went through what I call the motherhood identity crisis. And I now know that many, many, many women experience this. And I kind of categorize it as the like, who am I and what am I doing? All of a sudden, right? And
Mhm.
for many, many women, motherhood, really changes the whole paradigm of our experience of life and what we want. And so some of the goals that I thought I wanted changed, and all of a sudden things I was doing career wise didn't make sense anymore, and it was very confusing for me, and I had to sort of go on my own little personal inner journey, which took about a year to sort of map out a new kind of normal for who I am and how I thought that I wanted that to kind of be out in the world and what I wanted to do in my career and all those kinds of things. And it led me into coaching, and ultimately I've been kind of coaching ever since. But I knew that when I started my business, I really wanted to help women in that same intersection, both figuring out who they are, what they want to do to kind of end a lot of the conflict that I think we experience as moms between work and home. And I just hate the idea that women feel like they have to choose, like that they can only have one or the other or do one or the other well. And I'm really on a mission to shift that whole paradigm.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So, we were talking a little bit before. I have a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I became a mom really late in life. So I'm actually not the biological mother of my kids, because people always say, I'm 62, like, how could you have these children? And I was both super excited, and at the same time, I was saying, what have I done to my life?
Yeah.
Because everything, everything goes. You don't, yeah, it's different. It's
Yeah.
totally different.
Yeah.
And I think, I was very pushed in that corner of you should be excited, you should be excited, you should be
Mm,
excited. And there was really no room to grieve that
yeah.
independent and freedom and all the things that I had
Yeah.
that maybe I took for granted before I became a
Yeah.
mom.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I see that in it's kind of a subset of women that I work with, because I tend to work with high achievers, very career focused, or were very career focused prior to kids and still want to be those kinds of things. And I have found, particularly in that subset of women, that it's like guilt for really loving your job and not always wanting to be with your kids, and not knowing what to do, because our culture tells us that as moms we should always want to be with our kids, and we should want to be with them more than we want anything else, and that they should be everything to us. And I'm not saying that they're not, and that we don't have an immense amount of love, and desire to be with them and to be their parents, but we also can have and love a career and our work and our life outside of motherhood. And
Right.
culturally, familially, to navigate some of those.
Totally. And as a gay couple back then, it was even harder because it's okay for the men to be away for 3 months and travel overseas and have their career, but for the
Yeah.
women, it was just like always a double standard.
Yep.
I should just ditch my clients and
Yeah.
work less, and so that I could be there, at all times. So
Yeah.
it was really hard because I'd been coaching for 20 years and I had a wonderful career in America, and all of a sudden I had these things that people were asking me to do.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I think it's really, it's not the experience everybody has, but I think it's really normal for us to want to love our jobs and to be all into those and love our kids. And I actually,
Yeah.
I mean, this is the one of the things that I teach on a lot, that I coach on all of the time. It's really like the starting place with any conversation I'm having around work-life balance is like, first we have to believe that these two things are not at odds with one another, and that we can have both. Because if you don't believe that and you're constantly in a place of believing that they're at odds and you have to choose, well, then that's going to be your reality. You're always going to struggle against that. So we sort of have to find a mindset in there, a perspective that at least like shakes loose some of these, like, these two things are at odds and I have to choose, kinds of mindsets that we tend to get in and is kind of, we've inherited on some level.
And so how, for those who are listening and who are saying, "Oh my God, I am in that can," what would you suggest that how do people get started to look at that?
Yeah, I mean, it really is a stop and reflective moment, right? This isn't going to happen in passive thought. This is a sit and with a journal, or sit with a trusted
Mm.
person, sit with a coach, sit with somebody, and or just you and a pen, and you start to sit down and say to yourself, well, how might it be true that these things are actually not at odds with one another? So you're actually kind of arguing the other side. I tell my clients a lot to play the lawyer on the other side of this for a minute and give me the argument around why this it is possible for you to have both, and why these two things work in harmony to each other. Like, let's push yourself to think about how that's possible. And at the beginning, what tends to happen, it can be hard at the beginning, right? Because you've kind of been stuck in this one mode of thinking for a while. So you might be able to come up with a couple of thoughts. Well, I really want to be an example to my kids, and I want to show them that women can have a career. Okay, that's great. Well, why do you want that? And so some of these things start, there's eventually a domino effect that will start to happen as you really dig in and you start to think, well, how do my kids benefit from it? How do I benefit from it? How does the next generation of my family benefit from it? How does it make me a better parent? How does it make me a better human? How does it make me a better, all of these things? Because at the end of the day, and I know that you teach on this a lot too, and you talk about it a lot, our these are just, you just get to decide at the end of the day what your perspective is of this. There is no hard capital T truth about whether it's right or wrong for you to work and love your career or not. You just get to decide. And so we want to find a perspective that feels true to you and supports your goal to have both.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. And I think what really helped me was to look at how does it make me a better parent, because
Absolutely.
so I love my job and I love what I do and I make a difference in the world. And that really just gave me a lot of energy to
Yeah.
be a better parent and to be a good parent versus sort of having that yearning for, oh, but I want to work and I want to do my thing. So I think those are good questions. And, for those who are people who are not ready to work with a coach or something like that, I think sitting down with a journal and answering those questions for yourself is good. And then just to dig in as deep as possible and maybe even make those connections of where does this come from? Is this
Yeah.
something I picked up from society, or is this in my, in my community? Where is this present? And
Yeah.
do I really need to buy into this? Is
Yeah.
this really mine or is this somebody else's?
Yeah. Yeah. And do I want to buy into it? Right. I
Yeah.
mean, whether you've bought into it up to this point doesn't actually matter so much as do you want to continue to buy into it? Does it
Right.
serve you? I like to tell my clients, your perspectives are never right or wrong. They're not, again, it's not true or false. It's just, is it helpful to you or is it not helpful to you? Is your perspective moving you towards your goals, or is it hindering hindering you from your goals? And I mean,
Totally.
I have a story on this too, because one of I think the challenges that we face particularly early in motherhood is having somebody else watch our children while we go off to work. That was a really hard perspective. That was a really hard moment for me, and
Mm.
just quintessential what you hear from so many moms. It feels like somebody else is raising my child, and they're spending more time with somebody else than they are with me. And I for sure felt that way. And at the same time, I also knew I had no desire to be home with them at all. Like I didn't want to be a full-time stay-at-home mom in the slightest. And so this was there's a big conflict for me around this. And I felt guilty just across the board around all of it.
Mm.
And I remember there was this moment, and it had to be when my daughter was, at least like 1. So she'd probably been in daycare with a childcare provider for at least 8 or 9 months at that point, but it could have been longer than that. And I remember I was changing her diaper, and she made like a mooing sound. Like she saw an animal and she mooed. and I remember stopping and going, I didn't know she could do that. And I went to my husband and I'm like, did you teach her how to moo? And he was like, no. Did you know she could do that? No. And it just dawned on me, wow, she's learning things in this with this trusted person that I've, in this childcare, which I felt amazing about who I was, sending her to. She's learning things that I would never have even known to teach her, because they have done this for so long and they have, degrees in childhood education and all of these things. And it's in an instant, my perspective shifted about what a positive experience this was for her and what she gained from it, and how good it was for her. And the guilt like literally changed overnight. And it's that it can happen that quickly when you find a new perspective that really like resonates with what you know to be true for you.
Let's take a quick break. I want to remind you that if you're interested in learning more about neuro-emotional coaching or kinesiology, if you would like to have a taste, find out what it could do for you or your business, your family, please look at the show notes. There's a link for a 30-minute free introductory meeting, and we can explore it. You can look at what is holding you back. What are your dreams? What is it that you always wanted to achieve? Don't be shy. Sign up. Now, let's get back to the show. Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
I bet it was so, like such a free moment. It's like, oh, okay. I can be okay now.
I can be okay now. I don't have
I
to
can
worry
be okay
about this. Yes.
Yeah.
It's good for her. It's good for me. Of course, that didn't mean I didn't feel sad at times to be away from her. It wasn't like it was always, I wasn't jumping for joy every time I left her or anything like that, but I could find some peace in it, and know that it was good.
Good. And I think it's also important for us to mention that people will find themselves on a continuum. For some, that will be really hard and they will feel a lot of guilt. And for others, maybe not so much. And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's like, for me, it really took a while to sort of really move into that mother role with my first child. Mm. And then my second, it was just like instantaneously. And whatever people had told me before, it was like, it was not so. And, you can say maybe it's because I'm not the biological mother, maybe not. It doesn't matter, because we're all different. We're wired different. We have different things that are important to us. And so you're going to find yourself at different juncture of this parenthood having different reactions. And some might be like most, and some are going to be like, totally different.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's no right or wrong. It's always just your choice.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about, sort of suggestions and tips that you have. We talked a little bit about, I live in Israel, and, our reality of work-life balance is like a little different than, maybe some different parts of the world. But I think some of those are really go across the board of what suggestions that you have for mothers to sort of stay sane. Is really the best way I can say it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the missing piece for a lot of moms is that they don't take the time to step back and give themselves a sense of direction around what's important to them, what their priorities are, what they value, what makes them a good mom. There's lots of kinds of pieces of what I would call as the clarity process. Mm. And I say that because what, when this tiny human comes into the world, I mean, they are loud and they are dominant and everything is urgent. And so without a moment where you step back and sort of decide ahead of time what's actually important to you and what it is you want to prioritize and what you want, and otherwise you just live in reaction mode all of the time, right? It's just sort of a day to day, just trying to get by, just trying to survive until one day your kid is 2 and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like, what, and a lot of women will say, I feel like I'm resurfacing from this kind of early childhood time period. And I don't want you to wait until your kid is 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, whatever it is for you, till you resurface. I mean, I have plenty of clients that come to me with their kids being closer to 6 or 8, and going, oh my gosh, I feel like I've been lost for 8 years. And I mean, that's what I really don't want for you. And so what that requires is that you take a moment to step back and you sort of think through some really key points about the things that matter to you in your life. And if I were to call out a couple of those subjects that I sort of walk all of my clients through, one would be, very simply, if we're talking about like work-life balance, what does that mean to you? Because it means something different to everyone. It is a complete catch-all phrase. It has lots of different connotations based on your circumstance. Your version of work-life balance for you, not just because we're 2 different humans and our kids are different and we have, it's not just that. You live in a completely different reality than I live in. And so what does that mean to you? And how would you even know you were experiencing balance, right? And so you have to take a moment and actually explore that for yourself and what that means. And then it might change within the next couple of months, or it might change in a year, or for your reality, it could be even day to day on some level. What does that look like? It's another time where we are going to like step back. We're going to go, okay, what does balance mean for me today? What really matters to me? And I think the way I like to think about balance for anyone that needs a little bit of, a framing on that, I don't ever really think as balance as something external to us. It's not some set of perfect circumstance where you get time for yourself, and you get time for your work, and you get time for your kids, and it all magically like works in a 24-hour day. I think that what we're all really chasing when we are talking about work-life balance is ultimately a feeling. We're chasing an internal experience of our life. We want to feel at peace. We want to feel successful. We want to feel grounded. We want to feel on top of things, right? We're chasing some sort of internal experience. And obviously that has external implications, right? It will impact how you spend your time and those kinds of things. But really what we want to feel is something inside of us. And so that is the starting point I would have the listeners think about is what is that internal experience that you want, and what would that look like today in your life if you were experiencing that, and what would you have to be prioritizing to make that happen? What would you have to do less of to make that happen? I mean, that's going to give you a starting point of some sort of direction for how to take your prioritization in life.
I think you said something very, very important, and that is that I think many moms experience themselves to be completely reactionary all the time. And they're so reactionary that they're just basically in total survival mode and exhausted. And, then we have this conversation with them of like, oh, well, what do you want to do? And it's like,
you can't answer that question like, when you're in reaction mode.
You can't. So, but at some point you have to make a decision that you want something to be different. And that somehow this completely constantly being, in reactionary mode. And in Israel, of course, it's like we have circumstances that actually require us sometimes to be in reactionary mode. And it's even harder, to make space or carve out that time, because you're constantly in fight, flight, or fight, constantly in survival. But at some point I'm going to have to say to myself, okay, listen, I don't want this. I want to be less reactionary, and I have to, maybe crack the door open just a little bit and see how I can get myself to have that conversation. And even if it's only 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, and make a commitment to that.
No question. I had a conversation with a working mom yesterday who we were talking about coaching together and kind of just a first exploratory conversation. And I asked her I kind of asked her point blank. I said, do you want something different? Do you believe that you can have something different than the kind of chronic overwhelm that you're in right now and exhaustion that you're in? And she said, she took a pause and she's like, I don't think so. I mean, I think this is just the way it is for work for moms, right? Like we're supposed to be self-sacrificial for our children, and I want that for them, and I don't regret that. And I said, okay, well, I believe something different. However, coaching is not going to work at all if you don't believe that, right? So the starting point has to be you deciding that right now, this moment, that something else is possible for you, and there's a different reality you can live in. And if you're all in to like explore that, hey, I'm here for you. Let's explore it, and I can walk you through it. And it's okay if you're not, and you are good, because at the end of the day, all I want is you to not regret the choices that you made. And she, it took, we talked for a little bit longer, and eventually she kind of came to the point. She's like, I think I do want to explore something different. I was like, great, let's talk about that then. But it does really start with you have to step back and decide that you want something different. And then the next obvious questions will start to be, well, what is that different? What does that look like? What is most important to me right now? And it offers the opportunity to start kind of questioning priorities and decision making that you've had in the past, and trying to figure out what you want for them.
Yes, right. So that's a good point, that people have to be willing. They don't necessarily need to know, how do I get from A to B. They just have to be open to the possibility that I could have something different.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
And then we'll see. It's like taking a walk, and sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's hard, but we have to sort of believe that something is possible, something new is possible for us.
Yep. Yep. And then when you believe that, take the intentional step to start to really think about what is that new, and what do you want it to look like, and why does it matter to you?
Why does it matter?
Why? I mean, that's where the motivation is going to come in, right? And she even in that conversation said to me, well, I'm not sure really how. I think if I knew how, I would have done it. And I said, hold on, I don't think how is actually the right next question. I want to know why. Right. Why do you want something different? Right. Because that's where the motivation to make the change is going to happen. I'll handle the how. That's my job as your coach. If we decide to work together to handle the how, that's what I'll do. But I can't. You got to have the why. And so the why is more important, and it's always the starting point before we even get into the how, for sure.
True. So we have the how, we have the why, and now we're working on the how. And are there some tips that you have for our listeners, our viewers? We can say, this is something that shows up all the time, and it really makes a big difference. I love these little things that we can do that have a big bang. Because sometimes they are actually, and I'd be curious to hear what you suggest, or what you do personally also, if you want to share.
So I teach 2 really core daily practices. So I'm not somebody that loves to give lots of homework or things like that to my clients, because we don't have time. But we do need to have some very intentional rhythms in our life that's going to help center us and keep us grounded and keep us focused on our priorities. And so I teach 2 of them. One happens in the morning, one happens at the transition between work and home. So talking about the work to home transition first, that is a lot of us don't take intention with how we move from one space to the other space. And so what happens is we just take all of the stress and the overwhelm and the things I didn't do and the worries, and we bring them into our home life.
Yes.
And sometimes those things sort of work themselves out on their own, and we eventually kind of let those things go, but it takes a couple of hours, and at that point you only have a couple of hours sometimes with your kids at the end of the day. And so you just don't feel present, or you're kind of constantly checking your messages and things like that. That's kind of, we want to wrap up all of that processing time in a really intentional about 15 minutes that you can do between work and home. And that way you can really come into your home life and feel at the giving yourself the best possibility of really putting a period at the end of your workday and opening up the next the next chapter of the day into your home life, being present, being able to kind of let some of that stress go. And if you choose to log back on later and things like that, I don't actually believe that that's wrong or anything like that. I think you can do that. We just want to do it with a lot of intention. And so that work to home transition period is really important. I mean, I have actually a process, obviously, that I walk my clients through, but at a very high level, what we're talking about is sort of wrapping up loose ends. So whether that's like 30-second tasks that you just need to like complete, get it off your list, and organizing yourself for the next day, making very clear decisions around what you want to do tomorrow. Because what I don't want you to do is get to your desk the next day and sit and look at a long, unprioritized list, which immediately floods your body with overwhelm and stress and go, I'm not sure what to do. And so when you're in a space of I'm not sure what to do, you will do the easiest, non-important things. And so we want to make some decisions around what you want to do the next day that's going to, really make you feel like you made progress. And so it's kind of, that's really at a high level what that work to home transition should be. I also always encourage my clients, celebrate the progress you made that day. Yeah. Write down your successes, tell yourself that you did enough for the day. I mean, all of that's really an important part of having, closing out the day. So that's a really, I mean, I my clients that really get in the habit of doing that find so much value out of that 15 minutes. It's so hard to take because your brain is going to tell you should just get one more thing done. And you should just check one more thing off that list and send that email or do the thing. And no, I have to stop and I'm going to really close out my day so that I really feel good about how I'm spending time with my family. The other one, and I would, I'd actually love to offer this one to the listeners here. I call it the daily kickstart. It's the morning practice that I walk my clients through, and it's much more mindset oriented. But it is, if only one time a day you think on purpose, a really wonderful, powerful thought about yourself and your day and your capability and your success, like if you only do it once a day in this practice, I promise it's going to make a huge impact on how you think the rest of the day. And so it's a daily practice that doesn't take more than 10 minutes. It's 6 steps. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to decide, what do I want to think today? What's going to help me feel successful and good about myself and my life as a working mom? Maybe it's as simple as I am enough, or I am successful, or I am doing enough, or I am capable, or I'm highly valuable to my company, or I'm safe. I mean, these are really simple, powerful thoughts. And then the rest of the exercise just really helps you build upon that and build evidence to that, and helps you try to think through, okay, what's going to get in the way of me really believing this all the way through my day today? What are going to be my roadblocks today? And kind of helping yourself practically think through some of the mindset roadblocks that happen throughout the day so that you can kind of be on top of them. And so I call that the daily kickstart, and I would love to offer it free to your listener. So
awesome.
we could put it in the show notes for them to download that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
wow.
Absolutely.
Those are 2 great practices to have. I think transition is really, really important, and to get the day going, and with my mindset and hold on to that for the rest of the day. I think that's also fantastic.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. One of the things that, I hope it's okay to share, that you just reminded me of, is one of the things that I do when I go pick up my kids. It's sort of like I mark it up in my mind. I set my intentions of how is it going to be when we meet, because oftentimes maybe the kids are hungry or this or that, or cranky, whatnot. So I get myself into a space of really being able to receive them and being balanced and, and acceptance and harmony. And I want to say 9 out of 10 times, when I did this little sort of, intentional
practice or something.
Intentional practice, putting, and mapping it ahead, out, and visualizing about it. It's like, I have a great time when I pick them up.
Actually, that's one of the steps in my fuller work to home transition. So I love that you mention it. But it's, a lot of us don't visualize like that. Like we don't use that practice. It's really simple, right? Yeah. But I usually tell my clients, or the way I frame it is, I want you to think about like opening, to you, it's like the first time you meet your kids when you're picking them up from school or wherever. But
Yeah.
or it's like you open your front door into your family, and I want you to imagine your evening with your kids and your family going exactly the way you want it to go.
Right.
No, you don't get to change the circumstances in the sense that of course, they still are going to be hungry and they're going to have meltdowns. Okay. So we're going to keep it practical, but I want you to see yourself show up as like the sturdy parent in those moments, like
Exactly.
that. Keep it real, and watch yourself show up in exactly the way and the presence and the energy that you want to be in. It will radically change the way that you enter into your home life, because your brain will have seen what you want it to do. Like you will have rehearsed it ahead of time.
Right.
And you're so much more likely to do it when you rehearse it.
Right on.
I love it.
So-
I love that you said that.
Well, it's like, it's so simple, but it's like, it's like and in some ways, sometimes the simple things that are available to us, we don't always do them. So, and it's not just about picking them up or the transitions. You can, we can do this about anything.
Yeah.
So it's a good practice to have.
Yep.
So, we're about at the end of the podcast. So is there anything else that you'd like to share before we complete for today? It's been so great to have you.
Yeah, I want to encourage the listeners to recognize that the steadiness, the calm in your life, the getting out of chronic overwhelm and really experiencing a life that feels more balanced really doesn't take that long. We think that this is a long process and so many things have to change, and it is hard and it takes a lot of intention, but it doesn't have to take a very long period of time. So my program, my kind of signature work-life balance program, it's called Ambitious and Balanced. It's 3 months, and I choose 3 months because that is like the sweet spot that I think a lot of when you really put intention behind it, it's where I see a lot of women like the light bulb really switch for them, and where they're able to regularly implement the rhythms and the mindset changes that have taken place within it. And so don't think of this as being a long, overwhelming process. Like change can happen in an instant, right? You literally just get to make a decision tomorrow on how you want to operate and have that type of mentality. And you're gonna, you'd be amazed at how quickly the vision of the life that you want and the calmness that you want can really take place.
Awesome. That's so super. And we're going to have all the information in the show notes, how to reach Rebecca. And, for those of you who are considering working with her, please do reach out.
Yes. I have a new cohort starting actually at the end of July and beginning of August. So perfect time to connect with me and find out if that's a great fit.
Awesome. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been great to have you. And
so good. Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you. Bye-bye.